The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat. The Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, joined by a man who is known by at least one person in all 50 states and all 7 continents, including Antarctica. Andy Hamilton of TrackWrestling.com is back in studio with us. Welcome back from Poland, buddy.
It's good to be back, Kyle.
You liked it there, huh?
I'm glad to be back.
Okay. I heard there's a lot of birds from what you said.
Poland is for the birds, no doubt.
Poland's for the birds?
Kyle, I've never seen so many birds in my entire life. Hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 birds just congregate over the Berta River every day around 4 o'clock.
Did I see you comment or someone on one of your pictures that it was like a Hitchcock movie?
It was like a Hitchcock movie.
I don't know if that was you or someone else, but I saw that comment.
Yeah.
And it sounded like a...
It was a little creepy. These big, black birds. I don't know if they were crows or what they were. I didn't get close enough to really tell, but they're gigantic birds, man.
Well, if we can, just take a minute or two and just talk about U23s, and specifically Richie Lewis, who has ties to Iowa Central, was a 2-time All-American there, has fought the injury bug, but now is a U23 world champion in the inaugural year. Pretty great performance.
Richie Lewis, to me, is one of the best stories of the year in the United States as far as wrestling goes. I mean, how many times do you see a guy that gets injured and gets substantially better? But I think the chance to sit on the sidelines and kind of reflect on some things, and he said he did a lot of reading. He basically unlocked his mind. You know, the mind is such a powerful thing, and it can become, a hindrance, or it can become an asset. And I think he's taken it from one side of the spectrum to the other. And man, you think back to about 6 months ago, if I told you the United States had one under-23 world champion this year, like how far down the list would you have to go to get to Richie Lewis being that guess? I mean,
I even shook my head when I saw it. But like, is this right? Really?
I mean, but I tell you what, I mean, there was nothing flukish about it. He wrestled lights out, not just in Poland, but at the trials. I mean, at the U23 trials, I think, 70 kilos was, possibly the best bracket, the deepest. And he ran through it and outscored people, I think, 44-6. And in that, you had Anthony Colica, Levon Mays, Tyler Berger. So it's not like he just ran through a bunch of nobodies. And then, man, he was so impressive over in Poland, and it was just like every match he got more and more confidence. And tell you what, he's going to be a handful. There's, I don't think that it's not like he was scoring a bunch of exposure points and gut wrenches or ankle laces or things like that. He was scoring takedowns. So he's going to be a handful, I think, for people at 157 pounds.
So yeah, the question would be, with him wrestling at Rutgers, that makes the Big Ten race pretty interesting at that weight class. You have Michael Kemmer at 157 for Iowa, and then Jason Nolf, who's the defending NCAA champion there. Where do you see him fitting in that picture? Can he knock off Nolf, who really does seem unbeatable right now?
Well, I think we're going to find out more Friday night when he wrestles Kemmer, what league he's in. But I certainly think of, Nolf has kind of developed this air of, I don't know if invincibility is the right word, but I think that he's got a little bit of an aura to him where guys are maybe a little bit afraid of him. And I don't think Richie Lewis is afraid of him. I mean, he just won a bracket where a guy that finished third at Russian Nationals didn't make it out of the first round. So,
man.
I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see Friday night, and can he get off the bottom? A 7-minute match is a little bit different as well, but man, I was super impressed with him in Poland.
In studio with Andy Hamilton of TrackWrestling.com, breaking down the U23 World Championships, which means under 23, so you have to be under 23 to compete in that.
23 or under, yeah.
23 or under, okay. So you can be right on the dot, and I guess what would that mean if you're one day over? How would they even constitute that?
I don't know. I didn't look at the rules.
You didn't look at the rules?
But I know, there are, in the United States, a lot of guys that fall into that age bracket that are pretty talented wrestlers that we didn't see. I mean, Kyle Snyder would still be eligible next year.
Yeah.
So
maybe even Jaden Cox, too. I mean, you have a lot of young guys that certainly could be there. We have a lot of storylines to talk about. Make sure you stick around for the show today. We have Pat Santoro, head wrestling coach at Lehigh, who was a two-time NCAA champion for Pittsburgh. He's our first guest. And then Mark Reiland, who was an NCAA champion for Iowa in 1991. He's the head wrestling coach at Iowa City West. We'll be talking to both those guys. A couple great storylines that are coming up for the high school level. 2 3-time state champions might go head-to-head. They're both undefeated. And I think it's probably the first time 2 undefeated 3-time state champions might meet before they wrestle for 4 state championships. I can't think of any time.
I can't imagine that it's ever happened because you look back in time and nobody has ever won 3 and then lost going for a 4th. So to me, when you look back at all the 4-timers, I don't know that we've, there have only been a few instances where we've had 2 guys that won their 4th title in the same year as well. So just process of elimination, I can't imagine it's happened.
So Thompson versus Teskey. I'm saying Teskey's going to win. I think you think maybe a little edge to Thompson at this point.
I don't know. I really think it would be a close match. I go back and forth in my mind. I think they're both super talents. Alex has found a way to rise up, and the higher the stakes are, the better he seems to wrestle. And Brody's a super talent as well. I got a chance to watch him over in Independence the other day, and he thrashed a Minnesota State finalist, 6 takedowns, 3 turns, tech fall. But it's not just these two in that bracket. Philip Mooney from Nebraska is a stud. Jace Colzer from Kansas, I think, is a couple-time state champion down there. Guys with Fargo credentials there as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a really good bracket. I mean, we're streaming it on Track Wrestling. You can watch it on Track Wrestling. 39 teams in there, a ton of ranked wrestlers. Gable Steveson, the king of the jungle in high school wrestling right now, 3-time world champion, is going to be in the field at heavyweight. I think there are 3 ranked heavyweights. So lots of nationally ranked guys in this tournament. Nelson Brands will be in this tournament. Get a chance to talk to Mark Reiland later in the show about Nelson. So
no guarantees then that they meet in the finals or somewhere along the line. Ideally, that would happen. But interestingly, with these 2 guys, neither are going to be wrestling in state. One's going to Nebraska, one going to Penn State. So you have this unique setup with these guys that will be going to college out of state. Yeah,
and I hope we see this match. It would be a shame for one of these records to get tainted by a loss, but I think that people have been talking about this potential matchup since these guys went undefeated as freshmen. Would they meet up somewhere in freestyle or some preseason tournament? And it's just never happened. It's kind of weird that 2 guys of that caliber in the same state that have been at the same weight or right around the same weight here for 4 years have never butted heads somewhere along the way.
Talk about Iowa State right now. This is a program that had 1 8th-place finisher at the Cliff Keen Las Vegas tournament. They are not in a good position right now, 0-2 in duels. Not that I bought into the hype, but I just thought they would be a little bit further along, a little bit more solid than they are right now. I know there's time for development, and hearing Kevin Dresser's comments that he doesn't like to be patient, but this really is going to be a patient process that is 5 to 7 years. And I think, like you said, Kevin Dresser is not coaching an individual NCAA champion, so there's just a lot of things that are going into this Iowa State program. From your point of view, 5 to 7 years, do you think that's going to be about the right time to get them on track to being a competitive team again?
I don't think it shouldn't take that long. You look at some programs that have made some pretty quick gains. It's just... with the level of freshmen or young people around the country now, you're seeing guys stepping into college and winning right away. I mean, look at Vegas. Yanni Diakomahalis wins the title at 141. Austin DeSanto, true freshman from Drexel, finishes third, but he puts a 22-10 beating on Steven Micic of Michigan, who started the year ranked second. Evan Wick from Wisconsin, I know he's not a true freshman, but a redshirt freshman that just beat Logan Massa of Michigan and finished second out in Vegas. So a lot of freshmen are performing at a high level. You know, Mark Hall wins an NCAA title last year as a true freshman. We're seeing guys that are stepping into college more prepared to win than ever before, and that's what it's all about. You know, I don't think it will take 5. You know, if they get some more guys like David Carr, then you would think that it would turn around a lot quicker than 5. And they certainly have. Look at what was in the stable when they got there. I mean, I'm pretty excited about Kanan Storr and Ian Parker and Austin Gomez, and they've got some big guys that have performed well on the national level in high school. So shouldn't take that long. You know, will it? I don't know. I think they really need to hammer it in recruiting, though.
Yeah, and I think probably you have to set some parameters. If we say 5 years, what does that mean? What's the end game there? Is it to get a trophy? I don't know that 5 years that they're at that position. Is it top 10 in 5 years? Or what does that look like? So I don't necessarily know that they're going to be top 4 in the next 5 years, if that's realistic at this point. I mean, it's tough because, boy, I just thought it would just be a little bit more progress, and I don't know what my expectations were, and Kevin Dresser said in the press conference we got to be patient, but I just thought maybe a few more of those guys. Harrington might come around a little bit more. I just thought maybe a few of those was would sneak in, and I certainly didn't see 1/8 place finish at Vegas. Did you? I mean, did you think that was about where they were going to be?
Yeah. The one thing about it, though, their best guy, in my opinion, is Kanan Storr, and 141's no joke this year. I mean, you look at the level of high-level contestants that are back. Guys, Dean Heil, 2-time NCAA champ, Joey McKenna, U23 world bronze medalist, Bryce Meredith in the finals a year ago. Anthony Ashnault has won a ton of matches, a couple Big Ten titles for Rutgers. We haven't seen him on the mat yet this year. I could keep going, but that's a really deep weight class. And then you start adding in guys like Chad Redd from Nebraska, Yanni, Josh Albert coming up from 33. So you look at it on paper, and where does if it's not Kanan Storr, where does Iowa State's All-American come from this year?
It doesn't, probably.
Yeah,
at this point. Northern Iowa places 4th at the tournament. I thought it was a solid performance. Up and down the lineup, had a finalist in Josh Albert, a few other place winners. I think all in all, you have to give pretty good marks for Northern Iowa in that tournament, about where I thought they would be. I think it's a top 10 to 15 performance at the NCAA championships.
Yeah, and they're going to – I think you're going to see an even better performance from Northern Iowa as time goes along this season when you start thinking about, possibly adding Rudy Yates to that lineup. I know they've been high on him. I think they expect more out of Carter Isley. I think that there's a lot of potential to unlock there at heavyweight as well. And then, we saw Drew Foster probably at his best last year in March, the way he wrestled the NCAA championships and beat some high-level guys at a really tough weight class to get himself on the stand. I don't think we've quite seen his best yet this season, so I think there's more growth potential there out of the Panthers. And what was Max Thompson, I think, 4th or 5th?
Yeah.
That, he started the year ranked 3rd, and I think he's capable of being a guy that's in the top 3 nationally. So, good tournament, but certainly room for more.
Iowa wins a last-second dual meet against Illinois. It's 18-17. They needed to win at 197 just to be competitive or be in that situation, be able to get a pin by Sam Stoll in the finals. Excuse me. In an overtime win at 197, then they go into heavyweight. Stoll gets the pin. Iowa's in an interesting situation right now because I really do think if they're going to be competitive and be in that mix, they definitely have to bring guys out of redshirt at this point. Everything I hear is that Spencer Lee, I'm not going to say he's a go, but it sounds like there's some positive vibes that he'll be wrestling this season. Not sure about Warner at 197, but if you had to say, you're going to say that we're going to see 125, someone different other than Stickley at this point?
I think, just gut feel, I think Spencer will be in the lineup second semester. And I think, I suspect that Jacob Warner will redshirt this year. I mean, you just look at kind of from a roster management standpoint where they've got Cash Wilkie, and I think we've got him ranked 5th, around a 12 guy a year ago. If you bring Warner out, then you've suddenly got a pretty good guy sitting on your bench, especially if Pat Downey finishes up his academic work and completes his transfer, and he's in that lineup at 184 pounds second semester. So, boy, you think about Spencer Lee and Pat Downey, though. You add those two guys to the mix, and you're talking about 40 or upwards of 40 points that could add to that team in the second semester.
Makes a big difference. And you mentioned just that they wrestle Rutgers. I think that's going to be a really good meet. And
great duel.
Yeah, 157 especially with Kemmer and Richie Lewis going at it. Hard to say what's going to happen there, but no guarantees that Iowa wins against Rutgers. That's going to be a good one, and it's at Rutgers. Maryland's a little bit down right now, should win that one fairly easily, but it's going to be fun to be able to talk next week about what the results are against Rutgers. Yeah,
Rutgers has got a good squad. I mean, Soriano at 25, Del Vecchio at 33, Nick Gravina at 84. They haven't had Ashnault, as I mentioned earlier. If they could get him back, that adds another dimension to that lineup. We talked at length about Richie Lewis at the beginning. There's some good pieces to that lineup.
Now, you talked about the 141-pound weight class, and it's just really amazing, all the guys you just listed off there. But you have a two-time NCAA champion, returning NCAA champion, and Dean Heil that a lot of people want to see go down. Is this the year he does not win it? Or one of those guys you mentioned other than Heil, are you going to pick the field against Heil at this point?
He's like the cat that always lands on his feet, right?
It's true, man.
I mean,
he does. He wins.
You would think that law of percentages, with as many close matches as he wrestles, that he'd get clipped somewhere along the way, but it hasn't happened. And I'm not picking against the guy. I think there are a lot of guys that could win the tournament, but I'm done picking against Dean Heil.
Yeah, I did last year, and it didn't work, and he went undefeated and had a pretty solid season.
The one guy I would really keep my eye on, though, is McKenna. How does that move to a different culture at Ohio State and being around Kyle Snyder and in that training environment, rolling around with Logan Stieber? How does that affect him? How does being part of a championship-level team, a team that's ranked number 1 now, and does that take him to another level? He looked really good in Poland, I thought.
Yeah. Now, Northern Iowa, or UNI Open, is this weekend, and by no means am I saying that this would happen, but what if Spencer Lee happens to be at that? That's a great reason to pop over there, hit the dome up, and just see who's going to show up. You never know. Last year, Isaiah Martinez was there, wrestled Daniel Lewis, so you just don't know what kind of matchups you're going to get. So if I was flying under the radar and says, hey, we just want to get Spencer Lee some competition, why not start at the UNI Open? So in no way is this an endorsement saying that was going to happen, but hey, you never know what things
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me.
So get over to the UNI Open this weekend. Stick around for our first interview. Pat Santoro is the head wrestling coach at Lehigh University. He's next on the mat.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When all you want is sports, all you need is 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Andy Hamilton of TrackWrestling.com. Our first guest is the head wrestling coach at Lehigh University. He was a two-time NCAA champion for Pittsburgh. Pat Santoro on the line with us. How are you, Pat Santoro? I messed it up already. How are you, Pat?
Doing well, thanks.
Hey, I got to ask you, first of all, we mentioned that you were a two-time NCAA champ. You won one of your NCAA championships in 1989. Tell me about this guy from Clarion, Mike Cole. I saw that he ran through the tournament, got beat by Townsend Saunders, and then got 2 pins on the backside. Looks like he was a big pinner, had a lot of pins in college.
Oh, he was dangerous. Yeah, he frustrated me a lot in college. He was very funky. He had the funk before the funk was popular. He was a very good wrestler.
So
he beat me a number of times in college.
And he was from Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Did you wrestle him in high school too?
No, we never wrestled in high school.
Okay. So he just had a cradle, I've heard. I mean, what was his MO?
He had a cradle. If you shot on him, he would kind of roll you up. We call it the Cole roll. He'd roll you up a little bit and end up on top a lot. And in that roll, he could end up with like a lot of cradles. He's very good with it. Very good pinner.
So is that one of those things where you were glad that Saunders knocked him off in the semis?
No, it's one of those things you kind of wanted to wrestle him again.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You always want to wrestle someone that beats you.
Yeah, and it's probably fun, too, that you guys were both from PA. I don't know if it mattered that much, but it's
no, at that point, doesn't matter. But, no, he was a great competitor. Mike was really good.
Well, you had a great dual meet against Penn State. It didn't work out in your favor, but, man, a lot of people there, a lot of energy. Just overall, what was the buzz and the vibe from people in the Lehigh wrestling community about the dual meet against Penn State?
You know, it was a great event. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I think our guys they enjoyed the moment. I think the Penn State wrestlers enjoyed the environment. It was just a lot of fun, a lot of knowledgeable fans, and they came out. It was just a lot of good matches too for the fans. We came up on the short end, but overall, it was just a great experience.
Did you think you had a shot, especially when you got those two big pins right off the bat?
Yeah, we knew we had to beat one of their big studs, though. We knew we had, 74, 84, and heavyweight were the three matches that we needed one of those. And we came close. We just didn't have enough to finish it, but we got to learn from that and move forward. But we thought we were in the hunt at that point. We knew it would be tough. We knew their horses were on the backside, and we knew that's, where they're going to make up a lot of their points. But we thought we had a chance at some of those matches.
What does that mean to you? I mean, just even to be competitive with Penn State, does that help you? Does that springboard you for recruiting and other things to help Lehigh?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, we just trying to do our thing here, trying to develop our athletes and trying to get them better. And every time we wrestle a match, we're going to win, no matter who it is. And, obviously having Penn State right here just a few hours away it's been really good for wrestling. They're kind of the carrot right now in the NCAA the last few years, so I think everybody's trying to keep up with them, and you see teams like Okie State and Ohio State getting better because of it. I think we're getting better because of it. So it's just good to have good competition, especially within the state of Pennsylvania.
Pat, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 2004 the last time Lehigh won a trophy. Does this team have the ingredients to do that?
I think we do. I think we have some guys that are really hungry. A lot of guys that want to be national champions. And as you know, at that tournament, you got to win that tournament, put a lot of points on the board. You need bonus points, and you have to go really deep in the tournament. 5 through 8 is it's not bad to be an All-American, but you get the guys in the finals and winning. That puts a lot of points on the board. So we do need guys that really wrestle well in March and vying for that national championship.
Interesting that your lineup, so many pieces changed place. In the upper weights, middle to upper weights. What went into that this year?
Well, this summer we knew Cutler was going up for sure, and then they wrestled in the universities last spring, and him and Price both went up, and they both did really well at the universities. That was the night before weigh-in, but basically wrestled 86 and 174, so the night before weigh-ins. So they weren't necessarily big. They didn't really cut for that. They just went and wrestled, and Jordan won and Ryan took third. So I think at that point we realized they both could go up. We still weren't thinking that yet. And then at the end of the summer, we kept talking with Cutler. He was getting pretty big. He was lifting hard. And I was like, what's your plan? He goes, I'm going 65. I'm going 65. And then towards then fall started, he's like, I don't know. What do you think? I said, I think wrestling's wrestling. You go where you feel your best. And then he started at 65. But I think after certification, he's like, I don't know if I want to do this all year. And, I agreed with him. I'm a big believer that if you're stuck between weights, go up. I just think if you focus on getting better in wrestling, you get a lot better. And it's worked out for him and Ryan. And, Ryan's such a competitor. He doesn't care where he wrestles. He just wants to go out there and wrestle.
We're on the mat with Pat Santoro, head wrestling coach at Lehigh University, also two-time NCAA champion for Pittsburgh. Had a close dual meet with Penn State, the top-ranked team in the nation, or second-ranked according to TrackWrestling.com, 23-19. I know you had it at a different facility, but are you going to go back to the Snake Pit for subsequent duels throughout the season?
Oh yeah, well, Snake Pit's our home. We love the Snake Pit. It's a great environment. I don't know if you've been to a match there, but it's very loud. It's a fun place to wrestle. I know teams like wrestling there too. We'll wrestle our matches in grace. Yeah, this is an event that we did, and hopefully we can do it again in the future. But it worked out really well. Couldn't have gone better.
Well, we have the West Gym in Cedar Falls, and it seems like it's somewhat comparable to Grace Hall. But just explain what it's like to actually wrestle there, because I've heard so much. I've never been to a dual meet. It's on my to-do list. But tell us what it's like to actually compete there.
Well, I think for one, the fans are really knowledgeable. So they show up and they're very vocal, and it's not, that's always a lot of fun. And the second is the acoustics are amazing for sound bouncing off the steel. We got a steel town here, so when the Grace Hall gets rocking, it just echoes. So it gets extra loud. I think that's part of what makes it such a special place.
And what's the iconic quote from Jerry Lehman? It's wrestling at Lehigh is not a sport, it's a religion. Is that?
Yeah,
I think I've heard that
much.
before. I mean, does that really encapsulate what it's like at Lehigh?
It is. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty accurate quote.
Now, throughout the course of the last couple of years, I know that there were just some keeping you at Lehigh was an important thing. Was there ever a situation or anything that would make you want to go to Pittsburgh where you wrestled, or did you really want to stay at Lehigh?
It's hard leaving a group of guys that you really love and care about. That was I had to look at Pitt just because it was my alma mater, and I love Pittsburgh. I love everything about Pittsburgh. But at the end, I think to leave this group of guys, I knew it was going to be the next few years were pretty special with this group. That was hard to leave. So I think ultimately Lehigh is just a great place. Wrestling is so important here. You don't find that at very many schools where it's the top sport. And I think for the opportunity to do that, and it's a place where I grew up in the Lehigh Valley with great fans, it's hard to leave that community.
What do fans expect out of the program? Do they want a national team championship, or what is the realistic expectation at Lehigh? Because there is a lot of pressure to win. What does that look like for you?
I think ultimately as a coach, we want to win a national championship, and before we do that, we got to we got to get a trophy and bring a trophy home, and if we can do that, I think it'll help us. We're not far away. We get, I think last year we were in the hunt for it. We had, with Jordan not making weight, that hurt us a little bit at the NCAA tournament. But I think this year it's a possibility. I think next year it's a really strong possibility. But I think you start doing that, and then we're one or two big recruits away. Looking for that difference maker, and that happens. I think we can vie for a national championship. But we do need to get the right kids, not just the best wrestler, but the right kids, the right fit. We're really big on culture here, so we get the right kid doing the right things, and he's impacting people around him on and off the mat. I think that's when championships are really won.
It's hard to recruit in Pennsylvania with all the competition, not just Penn State, but everything else that goes on in Pennsylvania. We have 3 programs in Iowa. What's it like competing against all the other programs in PA?
It's not even, we have a lot of programs in Pennsylvania, but the whole country recruits Pennsylvania. So it's very difficult, obviously, but it's one of those things that, and the nice thing I think people know when they're looking at Lehigh, that you're getting a world-class education, but you can also wrestle with a sport is really important. When your president and AD are showing up every match and speaking to your team, and it's a community here. And wrestling is really tight-knit group, and it's through and through in university. So I think that part of it makes Lehigh a special place to be when, with recruits. I think the ones that really delve into it and look at the whole full package, I think Lehigh is the place.
Having a returning NCAA champion in Darian Cruz has to really elevate the program, just not only just from an awareness point of view, but just from an intensity and just a motivation point of view, that you can point to a guy in your program that did it. What has he done to add on to what he did last year? Because it's a competitive field, 125 pounds. Do you feel like he can continue to make progress to get to the top of the podium again?
Yeah, I do. He's off to a good start this year. He just focused. He never talks about last year. It's something that's in the bank. He can't win that title again. He's got to go out and chase a new one. I think he understands that. He just comes in the room every day. He's a very creative wrestler. He trains hard. He's very athletic. I think he loves to compete, and I think the bigger the lights, the better he wrestles.
Hey, Pat, what took Scott Parker from qualifier type to an All-American to a title contender the last couple of years?
He's just an unbelievable person. On and off the mat, and he does it socially, does it academically, he does it athletically. The team always looks to Scott. He's kind of the heartbeat of the team in a lot of ways. He does all the little things right. And we have a quote here. We always say, little things make big things happen. And that's what Scotty does. He does all the little things right, takes care of detail, and over the course of a year or 2 years or 3 years that you get really good at that. But he's an unbelievable person. It's a great family. His little brother is off to a fast start here. He's redshirting for us. But just the same work ethic, the same mindset. He's just an unbelievable person.
We are on the mat with Pat Santoro, head wrestling coach at Lehigh University. He was an NCAA champion for Pittsburgh twice. We are talking Lehigh wrestling, but let's just talk about big picture of the sport of wrestling. When you were at Maryland, you and Tom Brands were actually passionate for a couple years there about maybe some of the inequities about how individuals qualify for the NCAA championships. Do you think those issues have been resolved on how different conferences get into the tournament?
Yeah, I do. I think that was something that we both talked a lot about when we were down in the ACC, and because we knew the ACC was getting a lot better. And you look at it today; it's one of the great conferences out there. But we just thought we wanted the best wrestlers at the national tournament, and I think this formula gets the best wrestlers. The best 33 guys are there. I know that conversation from 28 to 40. Everybody has an argument, but I think that's why you see so many upsets too. It's just everyone you're wrestling is really good at the NCAA tournament. So I do think no matter where you go, what conference you go, you have a reasonable chance to get to the NCAA tournament if you take care of business during the season.
Do you feel like the EIWA winning that conference championship as a team is maybe more important than other conference championships just because of the history, just knowing that, hey, to win that really has taken a big deal historically, and at one point it might have been bigger than the NCAA championships, to be honest with you. Do you feel like that holds more weight than maybe other conferences?
I think it definitely holds a lot of weight. I think it's important. Obviously the NCAA tournament is the big one we all point to, but winning the IAAs is huge. It'll be big for our program to get back there and win that again. It's been a while. Cornell's kind of dominated that, but I think the Big Ten is pretty important to win too. So I think those two conferences are head and shoulders above the others as far as the ones that you want to win.
As far as where your team is in position, ranked 5th in the nation, depending on which poll, but as far as getting that team trophy, we mentioned a lot of the guys on your team. Who are the couple guys that really need to step up and get you points this year to be in that top 4 trophy race?
We just need to see continued improvement. I think, obviously, you have Scotty and Darian. Obviously, you got to continue what they're doing. But you guys got like Cutler and Price, are both in top 5. They're doing what their things are doing, and Jordan Woods is really coming along nicely. Luke Karam's coming along nicely. We have 3 really good 65-pounders we're still trying to figure out. But we have a lot of really good talent on our team right now. So those are the guys that have kind of been in and out of the rankings right now. But we need to pop those guys and get them moving up in the ladder there. And obviously rankings at the end of the day don't mean anything. It's just a measuring stick of where you need to go, where you are. But we need all 10 guys at the national tournament. We need a bunch of All-Americans. We need a number of national champs to make that run.
Pat, with your depth, 25 to heavyweight, are you disappointed there's not a dual championship this year?
Nah, I don't think about that. I just because it's really, I don't know. The whole dual meets are really important at Lehigh. So whether there's a dual meet championship or not, we're going to show up and wrestle. I know there's been a big push for the dual meets. I think something like that could happen in the future, but you just point me in a direction where we're going to wrestle. We're going to wrestle. I'm not into the debating whether we should have duels or not have duels. We'll do what they ask us to do, and we'll show up and we'll wrestle.
Hey, is your wrestling room up to snuff? Is that where you want it to be?
It's I don't know if you've been out here. It's a pretty amazing room. We have a new facility we got about 4 years ago. It's a pretty big room. We have a weight room right below it. Our offices are below it. A locker room, a lounge. It's pretty nice. Everything's right here. The cafeteria is literally about 75 yards away. Walk out the door, so everything's right here.
All right, Pat, we have not done this in years. Scott Fensloff doesn't even know I'm doing this. It's been years since we pulled out this feature, and we're going to start it back up again. We don't know who it's going to be for a guest, but you're the guest that we're going to put in the hot box. We have 5 questions, hoping to make you sweat. Pat Santoro, are you ready to go into the hot box?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, come on. I want more enthusiasm. You're going for a team trophy, man.
Let's have it.
All right. Question number 1. Who is the person you've never met but would like to?
Person I have never met but would like to. Gosh, I never thought about that.
That's why it's the hot box, Pat.
Dabo Sweeney.
Dabo Sweeney, huh? Do you think you could meet him? Yeah. I mean, I don't even know where you would meet him.
I have no idea, but I like the way he coaches. I like what he's about. I'm a Clemson football fan. So.
Okay. I'm giving you a point there. I think Andy's nodding his head, too. He's going to give you a point. Question number 2, discipline or imagination, which is more important?
Imagination.
Okay. I would have thought discipline from you, so that you threw me a curveball. I'm actually giving you a point there. Question number 3. You wrestled at Pittsburgh. If you were coming out of high school today, would you pick Pittsburgh or Lehigh?
Lehigh, of course.
You would? Okay.
Yep.
I mean, do you think you would have won 2 championships for Lehigh like you did?
I'd like to have won 4, so I don't know.
Okay, all right. All right. Question number 4. Are we giving him a point there, Andy? Okay, 3 points. Prime versus Prime, who wins between Tom Brands and Kerry Colott?
That is a good one.
Because Brands said he wrestled you a lot in practice when he was going for the gold, so...
Yeah, he's pretty tough. I've worked out with both of them. I worked out Kerry a ton. I don't have an answer for that one. They're both really elite.
Okay, so you're taking the high road. We can't give you a point.
I'm going to take the high road.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a really good one.
All right. This is the final question. What's the best or worst practical joke you've ever played on someone?
The best or worst practical joke? I don't know. I don't think I've ever done great ones. I do all little dumb ones. My kids got me with a good one on April Fool's Day last year.
All right, what was it?
Does that count?
Yeah, sure.
They put
hear
some toothpaste in an Oreo cookie, and they fed it to me after dinner.
Are you kidding me? Oh
no, April Fool's is pretty big at the Santoro house.
Really?
So we're always getting each other, yeah.
So you didn't pull any pranks in that one? You just took the
I do
toothpaste?
little dumb ones. Yeah, I'll do different ones. But that was the one I had to give them credit because, that was a good one. I was like, all right, you guys got me.
Did you actually digest it and put it down the hatch?
No, I didn't digest it. I ate it, though. I got it in my mouth, and I was like, all right. And as soon as I bit it, I knew.
All right. You are out of the Hot Box 4 for 5 starting out. Thanks for being on the show, and thanks for being so willing to be in the Hot Box. We'll have another guest the next time. We don't know who it's going to be. It might even be Andy at some point, so we'll see. Thanks for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, that was Pat Santoro, head wrestling coach at Lehigh University. Up next, we have an NCAA champion from the University of Iowa. He won that championship in 1991. Now he is the head wrestling coach at Iowa City West. Mark Reiland is on the mat next.
Log on and listen online at 1650thefan.com, the online home of 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Andy Hamilton of TrackWrestling.com. Our next guest is someone that Andy Hamilton knows well because Andy was the beat writer for the Iowa City Press-Citizen, and our guest is a 1991 NCAA wrestling champion at 167 pounds. Now he's the head wrestling coach at Iowa City West. Mark Reiland, how are you?
I'm good. Did
we lose you?
Nope.
Okay, I just heard you. I thought you were going to say something else there. Hey, we just had Pat Santoro on the program. He said that his kids put toothpaste into an Oreo as an April Fool's joke. That sounds like something you might do.
No, I would never ruin an Oreo.
That's awesome. Would you pull a practical joke, though? I mean, you seem like a prankster at times.
Oh, I might pull a practical joke, but I'd never do it with food. You'd have to do it with something else.
What would you do? What would your practical joke be?
I don't know. I've learned so much from, like, Jimmy Zaleski and all the pranks he used to pull. I probably could figure something out, but I definitely wouldn't use food.
But, see, I never would have even guessed that Jimmy Zaleski was a practical joker. Tell us about that. You got me interested.
Oh, no. I mean, I sometimes I never thought he was ever serious. He was always... It was always something, so, it's kind of, I remember a skit a couple of years ago that I think it was on Flow Wrestling that they put his Oregon State athletes were kind of doing a mock...
The mockumentary.
Of him, like, in the sauna and, interviewing him, and I got to tell you, those kids were pretty good because they hit him dead on, and I think it was good payback for him.
Right down to the laugh. They had the laugh down, too.
Yeah,
Where can I see this?
I'll find it for you.
Okay.
I mean, it was just, a lot of times when you talk to Jimmy, it's more mumbling, and then he just starts laughing at you, because he sees the humor in it sometimes, and you're just like, I don't even know what you just said to me. But he's laughing, so you just start laughing at him.
Yeah.
And that's what they did on their little skit. It was good. I was impressed. So
Let's go way back to when you were wrestling in college. Of course, you wrestled under Gable. You were an NCAA champion in 1991. You won your championship in Iowa City, got a pin over Kevin Randleman, who recently just passed away. But you had an interesting match there where you have a really talented athlete. Is that something where you went out, you were looking for that, or did you fall into that neck wrench and get the fall?
Well, that was our fifth match that season, so it wasn't like we didn't know each other very well. It was a similar situation. The first time we wrestled, it was a front headlock situation, and I ended up putting him on his back and pinning him that time. So, no, it wasn't something that I was looking for, but it was definitely something I was ready for.
Well, 91, that was the championship after that 4-year championship drought from 87 to 90. That was a great team that year. You guys really dominated not only that year but the following year. Did you know that you were in the midst of something special with that team?
Well, I think, a lot of us came in together, and Gable spent a lot of time on our recruiting class. I think he realized, when we were coming out, that was the first year they had lost, and I think he realized that the trouble he was in as far as the type of kids that he had in the program, and he spent a lot of time on our class and brought in, myself, Chelsvig, the Brands brothers, and there was Stryker, Pfizer. Actually Pfizer came in later, but Don Finch was in that, and then Tom Ryan joined our class later too. But so he put a lot of effort into our class and the following class with Steiners and Zapple and Osendorf, and really kind of put it back in place, and made for a pretty good run from that moment on.
Some big names still in the sport. Steiner, Brands, Tom Ryan, John Osendorf at Coe College. Do you keep in touch with those guys?
Yeah, I talked to obviously with Tom and Terry here in town, and I'm coaching Terry's son, so I talk to them, some, and see the Steiner some, and talk to Ozzy when he's looking at some of my kids, and we've got a connection. So
we are on the mat with Mark Reiland, head wrestling coach at Iowa City West. He was an NCAA champion for the University of Iowa in 1991 at 167 pounds. You mentioned Terry Brands' son, Nelson, is on your program. Could you ever imagine that you'd be in this situation coaching Terry Brands' kid in his senior year?
I couldn't imagine coaching this kid and actually enjoying it, but no, it's kind of fun. I mean, it's his grandma, Tom and Terry's mom, spent a lot of time with my parents, and she still comes and watches, and it's kind of an old school deal. I mean, you got flashbacks and such, but a couple years ago, we had Chad Zapatel's nephew was on our team, so his grandparents would come some. So it's been unique, I guess, in that aspect.
What's the biggest difference between Nelson and Terry?
Probably his approach. I mean, really the way they wrestle on the mat isn't a whole lot different. Nelson is a little more easygoing, a little more. He's just not, focused on one thing. I mean, he likes to have fun, and he stays loose. Where I don't think you can imagine Tom or Terry relaxing ever. So, it's different in that aspect.
Does he bring a good energy to the room? Is he the guy that's leading the charge right now within the practice room?
Yeah, I mean, he probably has for a couple of years, and he knows that, and I kind of told him, when he won his first state title that, he's got to, he's now the face of the program, and he's going to have to live up to it, and he's done that. I mean, he's done everything, that he can to help lead this program in the right direction.
Does he have skills that can translate to the next level?
I think so. I mean, he's got a motor that doesn't quit, and he's really strong, really physical, really good with his hands, which high school kids aren't typically that physical with their hands, and obviously that probably comes with his upbringing, but he spent a lot of time in that room, so he knows what's expected and what's coming. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for him.
What's Terry's involvement with your high school program?
Very little.
Very little.
I laugh and say he's actually probably the perfect parent, and anybody that's watched Terry on the side of the mat or in the corner of Iowa meets would never believe that, but it's the truth. I mean, I think back to a couple years ago when he won his first state title, going in the state tournament. We had the Southeast Polk kid in the quarters that we had never beaten, that had beaten us bad a couple of times, and actually beat us like 9-3 that year. And I had kind of put together a game plan for it and scouted a little bit and went to Terry to ask him. He goes, "You're the coach. I agree with you 100%. And I'm like, "Dude, you're a two-time world champ. You do this for a living. You got to give me something." He goes, "I agree with you 100%. I'm like, "Okay." I mean, you got to pull teeth to get anything out of him, really. And when you look at it that way, you don't want to, as a coach, you don't want to be looking over your shoulder, but you got a tremendous resource, and you're just like, "Come on, help me some," But he's been good in that, I mean, and he does the same thing with Nelson. I mean, he'll help Nelson if Nelson asks. If he doesn't, he stays out of it, and that's hard for a parent to do, and really, really when you're a parent that is that accomplished, it's really hard. So, it's good, and I certainly would take more comments from him or more help from him, but at the same time I know he's got his hands full, and we'll leave it at that.
We are on the mat with Mark Reiland, head wrestling coach at Iowa City West. He was an NCAA champion in 1991 for the University of Iowa. Iowa City West, you also have a crosstown rival, Iowa City High. Now that Brad Smith is at Lisbon, you guys had a famous public rivalry between you guys. You guys are both NCAA champions at Iowa. I've heard you guys get along now.
Yeah, and that probably shocks a lot of people. But, I mean, maybe I'm just getting soft in my old age, too. I don't know. I don't seem to have as many enemies as I used to, at least not in my mind anymore. So you grow up with age, I guess, and don't have to make everybody an enemy.
Mark, how has high school wrestling changed since you got into it from a coaching standpoint?
Where do I start? It's changed quite a bit. I think the kids themselves have changed. I think society's changed. I just think that I always go back to I think back to how we grew up, and obviously being in a small town farming community, everybody knew what hard work was and was a part of that. And now anymore, kids, especially here, I mean, kids don't grow up on a farm and have the chores to do, and day in, day out, and anymore farm families really aren't there. I mean, it's the big corporate farms anymore, and I think kids have lost that work ethic. And kids used to go out for sports so they didn't have to work, so they didn't have to go home and do the chores, and now it's they don't really have to do anything but go home and play video games, and sometimes it's tough to get them off of that. So that's probably the biggest change as far as just the work ethic part. But
and then you grew up in Eagle Grove, Iowa. Great wrestling tradition. Did you know that the tradition was that great growing up? Just the Bill Nelsons and the Bob Siddenses of the world.
I think I did. I mean, I think I grasped what it was about. I mean, it's kind of like when you come to the University of Iowa. I mean, you believe what you're told, and I was told how good it was, and I believed it, and it's coming to the University of Iowa, and you have Gable telling you how good you are, and you believe it. I mean, here's the greatest coach in college wrestling history, so God, if he tells me this, I better believe him. So, it was kind of the same thing in high school. I mean, obviously you knew the names, and being a history, knowing the history of Eagle Grove, you really kind of gravitate towards it, and Sidden's connection to Gable, and I mean those kinds of things were really neat. And I think growing up and thinking about, but now I'm old and don't think about it.
You miss having Andy Hamilton cover wrestling in Iowa City?
Yeah, I do actually. It was nice to have somebody covering us. I mean, it was somebody that knew it and understand it and appreciated it, and I mean, but we had something to cover then too. We were good.
So they're not covering it as much anymore? What? They're getting dogged in Iowa City?
Well, we're not the same level of talent as when you were here, so nobody wants to write about a loser.
Well, you have a solid team right now. You have 5 ranked guys, 4th in the nation according to the predicament. Should be a solid season, but we appreciate you taking the time to come on the radio show with us and talk wrestling. We could go on and on, but you'll be at the Battle of Waterloo coming up in about a week and a half, so we'll look forward to seeing you at weigh-ins at the Gable Museum.
Sounds good.
All right, that was Mark Reiland, head wrestling coach at Iowa City West. Fun for you, maybe to reminisce. I know you probably had lots of interviews with Mark back in the day.
Tons of interviews with Mark.
Yeah.
Tons and tons.
And I never got to see the Iowa City High versus West meet. It
was awesome back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
That'd have been a blast to see that.
That rivalry ran pretty hot there for a little while.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have too many of those in-state anymore.
We need to get those back. We have to close out the program. Thanks to Andy Hamilton of TrackWrestling.com for joining us in studio. For Scott Fensloff, I'm Kyle Klingman. You've been listening to On the Mat on 1650 The Fan.
You've been listening to On the Mat, the Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.